So this will be more about the ISOcat part and not semantic interoperability. I'll say some about the context, why are we using ISOcat and this whole metadata things for within Clarion. Some more about ISOcat. I give some examples and also give for those people who will be working with ISOcat to create all kinds of data categories, some do's and don'ts. And there are more for people interested in that kind of things. You would recommend to follow an ISOcat tutorial. There are separate tutorials about that. But just a few in here. Okay, someone could have a research question about a specific word, wijf, and all kinds of texts, and he or she wants documents by female authors, male authors, unknown authors, results ordered per region, etc. Okay, you need some content related things. So you need to have wijf that will not be in the metadata, that will is inside those documents. But also all kinds of metadata things here that you need to know. And that the texts are from the 16th, 18th, or 20th century, what the gender of the author is, that kind of things. And yeah, you won't do. Currently, years ago, people did it all by hand. They sat in their chair and read all those books and were busy for years when we wanted to answer a question like on the previous slide. Now you want to do it by machine, and you also want to make a subset, a selection of all those texts, especially when you're looking for the 20th century and 14th century. There's not that much machine-readable material, but all those 20th century stuff. You want to make a smaller selection using the metadata, so that you're not looking in 19th century material that you're not interested in. But there are some problems. These researchers are not speaking metadata-ish, or how you want it, and they fill just in some notions they are familiar with. What's clear for people is, of course, not clear for a machine. We know what an author is, but a machine as such does not know. The machine is stupid. So you will either need to know what, for example, the context author, region, or Dutch mean, or the machine doesn't need to know that. And well, there are several definitions around, because there are several encoding schemes around, and not everyone, just in previous talk you heard, and all these metadata schemes, ones are broader and others are narrower, so it is not really a guarantee that what is called an author in the one set is exactly the same as an author in another one, or they may use different names for it. Within Clarion, there is not really one metadata scheme in favor, and you may combine elements from several schemas. And that's need for semantic and interoperability, so that it can be used, really can be used in combination. But then, yeah, there are all kinds of problems. For example, when you have really old material, and we have the copyist, before Gutenberg we had a copyist. I couldn't find the English notion for it. I saw a monk just writing down what is in another document, and he just copies it. Would you call that an author? Is that an author? Someone who makes a law. Someone who writes down a law. Is a law made by an author? What is an author? And what defines a genre? What defines a region? And so that may vary in the several metadata schemes around, or that people just made up because they think we need something and we don't find it yet. So we want all these metadata concepts to be defined, for example, using CMDI and ISOcat. And all kind of things are being related, for example, using relcats and this relation registry. And Menzo will say something about this, I think, this afternoon. So ISOcat is this data category registry, and it defines all kinds of data categories, DCs. And that's the address www.isocat.org. So it stores data categories for all kinds of language resources, all kinds of linguistic notions, such as noun and that kind kind of stuff, but also for metadata. And it gives definitions, all kinds of administrative details, all kinds of examples. And it gives always gives it in English, and we always recommend for people working on Dutch to give the Dutch notions as well. A good example, I think, for a metadata thing that is just entered in ISOcat comes from the NEHO project, the Neger Hollands. And that's a definition for alphabet, because it was not yet a definition in it for alphabet. And for example, any set of characters representing sample sounds used in a language or in a speech generally. And I would say, more or less, that it's good because what you sometimes see in all these ISOcat things, they make it far too narrow. They say any set of characters used in German, and when you do that, make it far too language dependent, and it cannot be reused. So it's not language or project dependent. It's not tautological, and using the concept to be defined as the key element in the definition, because you don't say anything, and we'll see some examples of that later on. And it's reusable, it's not too strict. So this is maybe I would have some small comments, but in general, this is a good definition. And we will always like you to adopt an existing entry whenever possible, and only create a new one when it's really needed. Yeah, but of course, the definitions you adopt should be good ones. And what makes a definition a good definition of an entry a good entry? As I said before, the definition should be reusable. For example, I saw that there is a definition for conversation, and it said that it's a communication with more than 2 participants. Maybe that's true, but other people said, why should it be more than 2? 2 people is also. So it could be that this is too strict, that it's not necessary to have more than 2. That you say, okay, a conversation with yourself, that's not talking to yourself, that's not a conversation, but 2 or more. So this one could be too strict. Or when people describe mother tongue as that it is the speaker's mother tongue, and because it could also be someone writing down. So why should it be the speaker's mother tongue? So maybe you are writing, thinking of a definition for a spoken language, but don't always think, is it necessary to have it that narrow, or should it be formulated in a little bit more general way?
There's also circularity. You can't find mother tongue with mother tongue.
Yeah, that's its tautology, and there are plenty of them at the moment. For example, there's also a definition, I'm not sure whether that one was a good definition. Actor is a participant in an action or process. Okay, then it's not clear what action and process are, because there are several definitions, for example, of process in ISOcat, and that's not clear what is meant. But there is other definitions where there is someone called an addressee. When I see this, I can say a participant in an action or process. Is an addressee then all the same as an actor? So it's not clear here. An addressee as such is not yet defined in ISOcat. So that is something that needs to be done, because you have no idea what an addressee is. And we know, but the machine doesn't. And we know more or less. And it should be a meaningful definition. So, and that's what that just said. And the definition of annotation format is specifies the annotation format that is used in, sorry, I can't do anything with it. Or source language indicates if a language is a source language. That's, they are, or something like, for morphosyntax, a definite article definition, an article that is definite. That's also not really helpful. And for example, in this mother tongue, and you have it both, where the language is a speaker's, too narrow, and it's also, again, this mother tongue. So, yeah. And another definition is about mother's language, and it says, between brackets, it's not necessarily the mother's tongue, but still it is not clear what it is, because when you then go to the one above, that doesn't tell you either what a mother tongue is. So there needs to be done something. And also it's not necessary, it's not clear, home language, is that the same as mother tongue? Primary language, is that the same? Could it be the same? Heritage language. So all these things should be, should get definitions, and sometimes it could be, for example, suppose, I don't know, suppose that heritage language would be the same as mother tongue, and then it could be in the same definition as a synonym of that, of the name. And then, and you can say this WellCat, then it's more or less the same. When it's really different, then you could also WellCat to relate on those kind of things. But something needs to be done there. So, definitions should be as general as possible and as specific as necessary, as really necessary. Yet we'd always think, make it as general as possible. And first of all, try to reuse an existing definition. So these are some do's and some don'ts on the next slides. And there are more general for more than the metadata. So we really always would like to have all the data categories for one project together so that you can see how they are related. Especially we would like to have clear definitions, short definitions. Sometimes you have half a page of definitions, some 20 lines. That's not necessary. And take care that you don't use these tautologies. Use the appropriate vocabulary. And because I think, Dan, you know, I think the metadata things are always, when they are in an ISOcat, they're always immediately public?
No.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So we have, yeah. For all other things in ISOcat, we have a rule, and just leave the things private as long as possible. And only when they are really ready and good, then make them public, because at that moment other people can see them as well and reuse them. But these ones have to be made public then in an earlier stage.
But that's something people have to do themselves. It's not something that's enforced.
I thought it was okay. 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 So maybe a problem that doesn't exist. So don't be too specific in the definition. Make your definitions as general as possible. So don't mention it in OLAC and this, or in DC and Dublin Core, this and this. And have your definitions as such, as general as possible, that they come from, for example, Dublin Core, or from OLAC, or from whatever TRI header that can be mentioned another place in the whole entries. Do not use several definitions for one data category. That's also something you see sometimes. Don't make your definition circular. Do not rely on authorities thinking, oh, that will be correct because he or she made it, because that's not always true. And that is not always that it covers what you need to cover. There are a whole lot of entries, and the owner is Athens Core. And when you look at in the web page of the metadata CMDI, they say, okay, are there some recommended elements in this use Dublin Core? Do it, but be aware that for the moment there are still lots of these tautological, these circular ones in it. We will take care that they are improved. Yeah, so you can adopt them, but every now and then you have to look whether they have been filled out in a way you can use them. And now there are those definitions as mother tongue is the mother tongue, this is the speaker's mother tongue. So the circular ones. We will take care that they are improved. We can see that easily that they are tautological. But for example, this example of the conversation, and that is more than two speakers. When you see that kind of mistakes, please report them to us, because they are much harder to see whether that kind of things are too strict or not. And the tautological ones, we hope we see them ourselves. Okay, yeah. This is, yeah, when you are reading working with ISOcat, you will see that sometimes, and because definition has changed that much, that we say do not use it anymore and use a new one. But it's just for people working in the ISOcat. And when you really want to know about that, yeah, follow one of the ISOcat tutorials. Thank you. Questions?
Nobody has a question. I'll have a question for you, Ineke. Ineke, you are what we call the ISOcat content manager, right? So you are trying to, let's say, to lead all the, say, the efforts of the terminology modelers into, let's say, into efficient work. Can you tell us a bit about the plans that you have to get all the people that will work within these clearing projects?
The metadata, just or?
Well, metadata, but also the, let's say, the other thematic domains.
What we are.
What do you think is the best way for discussion here? Because evidently in some of these projects people need to do more or less the same work. They might profit from existing work or work that still has to happen.
I think maybe Menzo, will you say something about this clearing NLVL view this afternoon or not? Do you show something about it? Okay, there is within ISOcat there is a group, and all people working for clearing NL and VL, the Flemish groups, are together in a group, and we can see what we all are doing, even before they are made public. So then you can see what everybody is doing, and you can also comment on things, what people are doing. And there are all kinds of DCs, data categories, that are not yet visible for the outside world, but we can. Yeah? So that's one way to see what is done. Then when people think, okay, I myself, I'm writing a DC, I'm satisfied with it, they can make it available for my supervision. I can look at whether this is correct or not, and then I say, okay, this is okay, and you can make this public, or, for example, this alphabet thing. Should we say that it is a fixed set of characters, or is it enough to say that it's a set of characters, whatever. I can have some smaller remarks and discuss it with these people. But in the end, I will give people permission to make the things public. What we want to do in the near future is also to make those DCs that we say, we as Clarin NL, VL, say these are good ones, that we also give them a mark, a flag or something like that. And they say, okay, these are more or less considered as a kind of standard entities in our field.
Yeah.
And then they have not, because also with an ISOcat, there's a long procedure to have everything in a very formal way, standardized. But we then have a faster thing and say, okay, for us, in our Clarin NL, VL, or in our clearing domain, we consider these ECs as standardized.
Can I ask a simple question? Well, I was that simple.
Me or
Both, maybe, or everybody else. From the point of view of the researcher or the user of this tools, when you talk about semantic explicitness, I wonder if there's a possibility of constructing different alternative explicitness in terms of culturally speaking, from the point of view of anthropologists or linguists working with, let's say, the Malpais languages, which the concept of mother tongue really is very problematic. You would be able to define different ways of dealing with the concept. So I don't know if there's space for that. When you say, well, be specific or be general, it seems like it's like two-way.
Be as general as possible for your project,
Yeah.
but as specific as necessary. But is that general that it doesn't cover your needs anymore, then
Yeah, well,
For
I
exa-
just wonder, when I'm using this and I'm...
Okay. I don't know about the notion, now volume for example. There will be two notions, at least two notions volume for metadata. One, the volume 1 of a book and volume 2, but also the amount of noise in the speech thing. So there will be at least two valid and standardized DCs for volume. But then also other things, for example, within semantics, I'm from semantics myself, there is a notion event. Yeah? There are several definitions from it. And when you have really have a good look, then one notion, the one concept event is in fact the mother of another notion event. And the one is also called by other people eventuality. So then you see that there are different notions events covering different things. They are both correct. So they will be both in ISOcat as correct notions, definitions of event.
So it's possible.
Yeah, that's possible.
And that's where the relation register also comes in, because the user might say, I don't care about these distinctions between events.
Yeah.
Then he can create a same as relationship.
Yeah. But it's also there possible to say, the one event is the daughter, is part of the other one. So that gives you all these relations that are possible. And for example, say that author. Some people say author is very broad in one scheme. And other scheme says, okay, a copyist is not an author. You have authors of books, etc. Also someone who writes a law, that's not an author. Then you have, two definitions of author, but they are related, and the relation can be made via this relcat and this relation registry.
Thank you.
So that there can be for all kinds of things, there can be many definitions, but we try to standardize as few as possible. But also as many as needed.
Thank you.
More questions? No? Then I would like to invite you to have lunch outside, and we